meeting to order at 1:03 and go on with it.
All right, rolling.
Okay, very good. First item up is the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or subtractions or comments on the agenda? I didn't hear who that was.
Nope.
Josh was going to put the agenda up. I don't see it.
1 second.
Okay. We probably don't need it, but that.
There we go.
That's the charter. There we go. We got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Again, anybody have anything they want to add to it or think doesn't need to be there or other comments?
Not I.
Nope.
Okay, I'll take it that we've approved the agenda. Next is the minutes of the August 6th meeting. Copies have been sent around. Any additions, subtractions, typos, that kind of thing?
Well,
Okay.
the only typo that you still have is under Lisa Romero resignation. You have Liza on this one, and it's Lisa.
Okay.
It's close.
I'll correct that. Thank you. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, we'll consider the minutes approved as corrected. And I'll send them out sometime later today or the next day or so. I don't believe we have any body on here from the public or membership otherwise. Greg, you're invited to ask us a question at any time as we go along.
No problem. I'm mainly going to be multitasking, but I appreciate the virtual format. Thank you, folks.
Okay. Okay, seeing no public comments, let's continue on with the agenda. The unfinished business. What I've started to do is moving our bylaws material down to new business, if we haven't discussed it in any substantive way at least. And then how we bounce back and forth between new and old business, I don't think makes much difference on the bylaws material. But at any rate, under unfinished business, I just show the review that I sent around, the spreadsheet review, and Josh, I think, is going to put it up there. I don't plan on going down through it right now.
Your recording has reached the maximum length. To replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3. For delivery options, press 4. To cancel this message, press star. To send this message now, press pound or hang up.
I'm not sure where that's coming in from, Josh.
That's a
To
new one.
replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3. For delivery options, press 4. To cancel this message, press star. To send this message now, press pound or hang up.
Who did we call?
Must be Bill Gates.
To replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3. For delivery options, press 4. To cancel this message, press
Is it Greg?
star. To send this message now, press pound or hang up.
It's whoever's
No,
connected
Greg's
via
muted.
cell phone.
Your message has been sent. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
I don't think I'm connected to anything other than it sounds like that must have stopped it.
Yeah. Looks like.
Okay.
That was a new one.
Moving right along, this is a spreadsheet that I made up and have sent around. Again, at this point in time, I don't think we need to go down it step by step. I do have some color-coded highlighting in it. I guess one of the things in particular is going to have to get some attention is the ones that have got the yellow highlight, but we're waiting for somebody else, in particular the bylaws work group, to give us a response. The request for their attention or response, however the phrase that's been set out in each case. If nothing else after this meeting, I will follow up directly on that, unless we have the opportunity to follow up during the meeting. I think the other thing I want to point out on there is the red highlighting is what we haven't talked about previously, at least not substantively. Each of those items are on the agenda for today. So where it says we haven't started yet, hopefully by the end of the meeting, we will have made some progress one way or another on each of those items. So anybody have any comments on what the format, what it shows, how it shows it, that kind of thing that I can make some changes or add to as we go along?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, I think it's a great form.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay, well then we'll keep it as is, and I'll keep it updated, and we'll have it available before an updated version before every meeting. All right, now let's go on to the first new business item, and I need to move some papers here before I get too far behind what I'm doing. A little bit of background. Looking at what Josh could perhaps put up right now. Josh, could you go to the bylaws, section 9.02C? No, not this. 9.02C of the bylaws. Yeah, keep going another page or two. We're in 8.02 right now. Okay, we're at what's highlighted is the provision that says that the general manager shall maintain the personnel policy procedures manuals. Some quick background to why these four provisions are grouped together. Each of them make some reference to a source document outside of the bylaws or source information outside of the bylaws themselves. In other words, they don't refer to some other section in the bylaws for more information on the whatever is being discussed in the provision. And this is a specific example where it refers to personnel policy procedures manuals. These four were grouped together, and we'll get to the other three in a minute because they're more closely related. Do make a reference to an outside material. This one in particular refers to a personal policy procedures manuals, plural. And the question here is that the right document reference? And I think it's probably pretty clearly not. I believe there is now something referred to as the employee's handbook, and there may even be more than one manual, one handbook, one whatever term that goes with it. So the intention for this to be on the work group summary that we received is to update this as necessary to whatever is the proper reference. Now, technically speaking, what that means is we need to make contact with somebody in the staff, which would almost certainly be the general manager, since he's the one supposed to be in charge of maintaining whatever the proper reference is. And I think if we don't have Camilla with us, what I will have to do is ask her who we can contact to get the necessary information that goes here. So if we have any further discussion or question about that, that's what I'll go ahead and do, is take the necessary steps to get the proper reference to whatever manuals or manual fits in this particular provision. That's the intent of this being in the work group summary. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or other suggestions on this one in particular?
I do, Jim.
Yeah.
So because the Personal Policy Procedures Manual is capitalized, that makes it a specific thing, right?
So supposedly at the time the bylaws were written, yeah. I don't know that to be a fact, but yeah.
So just a suggestion, if we simply remove the capitalization so that it was just generically referring to Personnel Policy Procedure Manuals, right? Then we wouldn't have to put something specific in here that would require updating if the manual name ever changed.
Okay, I like that. I like that suggestion because it's really going to feed into our next discussion on the remaining three provisions that are in somewhat the same circumstance. Okay, I don't have any problem. I think that's a good idea. In addition to this one, the next three are almost certainly going to necessitate more contact with the work group, but that is our recommendation, if I can put it that way, for a proposal to go to amend the bylaws. I think that's a good approach. Anybody else care to comment on that?
I agree with it. I mean, I think that's a good idea because some future general manager might call it something else, and we don't want to have to keep updating all the time. But as it said, it was personnel procedures. I mean, that's a common terminology that everybody would understand why the GM is in charge of that handbook, manual, whatever. So if we keep it, like Keith said, lowercase levels to show that it's not the specific title of what it's called, but just the type of manual, I think that would last longer in our bylaws, and we won't have to keep changing or updating everything every time a new general manager shows up and wants to call it something different.
Okay. Bob, you have any further?
I agree.
Okay. All right, well, we'll check that one off as a part of our proposal. Josh, can you go to, let's go to 8.04B, and then we'll work our way back to the other two. Now, we're close. Okay, there's B. I don't think I need to read it, but the ending of it is where the question comes in, and it's similar to what we just talked about. According to guidelines and limits established by the board of directors. And this is a good point in this discussion to bring this up. There are two manuals dealing with financial management. One is called the Financial Management Policy Manual. The other is called the Financial Management Procedures Manual. So one manual is for financial procedures, the other is for financial policies. Again, very brief background on them. Both of them are dated August 2006. And they've been known to be out of date, or at least need to be updated, revised, whatever, for some period of time. And this one in particular, this reference here in particular, dealing with transfers of budgeted items and so forth, according to guidelines and limits. Either one or both of those manuals could be used as a reference in this provision. However, as I said, they are both well out of date. I don't have any idea whether we're actually living to each of the limits and guidelines that are in them. We may or may not. And they may simply need to be updated to bring into more current dollar numbers, if nothing else. But hold that right there, and Josh, if you can go to 5.14 E and F, because they're basically the same kind of thing. I don't know, Josh, you still with us? I'm not sure what happened. Let me continue on. I can kind of, I think, describe the situation. Let me get in front of the bylaws so I can briefly describe them. Bylaws. All right. The provision for 5.14E, which is duties of the board of directors. This one says the board shall establish limits and guidelines applicable to the execution of checks, contracts, and purchases, and so on. Again, this is another shall establish the limits and guidelines applicable. Similar to the one we just discussed that dealt with budgets. The same thing can be said here about the financial policies manual and financial procedures manual. One or the other or both could be referenced there if we were going to make a reference, and that was the subject of this from the bylaws work group, is making reference to a document outside of the bylaws themselves. Moving beyond that, or down to the next one, F says the board shall designate depositories for association funds and designate officers and so forth who have the authority to withdraw funds on behalf of the association. There is also in one or both of those manuals references to that kind of thing. Now, going back to what Keith has suggested, and we'll follow through on, about the personnel policies, manuals, and so on. I went back a little while ago and went into the bylaws as they existed before the current bylaws, the ones that existed up until 2008. And I even went back, there's a listing of amendments to those bylaws as an appendix to my copy. And I go all the way back to 1982, and essentially the same provisions for the three that we've got now, the budget, the checks and contracts and so forth, and the who can handle funds, so to speak. Those provisions in a little bit different wording, but virtually the entire exact content have existed back to 1982. And at one point in time, it may have been thought that we could pick up in here a reference to the two manuals, the financial procedures, financial policy manual. Number one, they're well out of date. And bylaws, Budget and Finance has it in their minutes of their meeting to be working on it, hopefully by the end of this current fiscal year. As an objective, it seems to me that referencing these two manuals is out of the question. And right now, looking at the bylaws historically, I'm not sure it's worth considering. We've lived with this kind of wording for, we're approaching 40 years now. Why should we change it now? So anyway, I want to, that's the background of this situation, and open it up for make sure we got everybody's discussion on this. I guess what I'm suggesting is we're going to go back to the bylaws work group and say, instead of putting in a employee handbook or whatever the current title is referenced for the one, we just make it kind of generic if that fits terminology wise. And in this one, simply leave it the way it is. Yeah, Keith, go ahead.
So just remind me, these changes, if they get accepted by the board, do these have to go to a referendum in order to get the bylaws changed, to get these incorporated?
The bylaws has to go to referendum. Now, what we're talking about here, on the last, the three that we're talking about, the three financial ones, skipping the personnel policies, if we didn't propose any change, there wouldn't be anything, that would be a part of a bylaws change proposal. The one on the personnel would be.
So I was an admin officer for a pretty extensive period of time in one of my past lives, and it's never a good idea to put specific titles of anything in a document. If you need to reference something specific, typically what you do is you have a reference page that's either in the front of your document or in the back. And then if throughout the document you need to reference that, you would just say reference A, reference B, whatever. And then that reference page, if you really wanted to do it, that's what you would update over time, is that one page. But in our case, I just don't think we need to do that. I don't see a need to change these particular paragraphs that you pointed out. And I just think it's not good administrative management of documents to make them more specific in such a manner that we're forcing ourselves to have to go to the people to get a vote to change the title of a document, in our bylaws down the road. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, okay, I fully agree. Laura and Bob, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I'm trying to go back to the one on 5. That was the only one I had a question, because it says, I'm trying to remember the wording on it. 9.02, I think. Let me just look.
Yeah, hang on.
The question I had in general is where it says as defined by the board. Where's it defined by the board? I mean, what's the reference and why is it important to be there?
Okay, which one are we talking about now, Bob?
I'm trying to see if I can find it again. I lost track.
So that's a good question, Bob. I actually was thinking the same thing. Those two documents as defined by the board,
Yeah.
are they literally board documents?
Yeah.
The policies and procedures manuals, financial policy and procedures manuals.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, they're
No, not that one, the other one. The one paragraph that ends with as defined by the board.
Yeah, that was the one I had the concern with, because defined where by the board.
I think that was 5 something.
Is that 514?
Yeah, try 514.
yeah, probably is. I'm going to guess F, but
E. This one?
No, it must be the other one. Must be the 9 one.
We did the 9 one, so
Or
804B.
Yeah, 804B. Because I was thinking something similar to what Bob is saying.
There you go. Established by the board of directors.
Yeah, established by the
Yeah.
board of directors. So does that
Where's-
mean that the inferred documents were literally created by the board of directors?
It has to be if they establish, where did they establish? And where?
Well, hang on a second, let me,
And does that change with each set of board of directors? Because to me, that is very, that could be a little flimsy in the sense that every time we have elections and there's a new set of board of directors, are their documents staying the same amongst themselves, or do they change their own documents? Is that what you're saying?
okay, I've got a copy of both the financial management procedures and the policies manual. Let me read something from both of them. This is in the, let me turn to the front page here. I'm going to lose track of this is in the policy manual regarding budget execution. The general manager shall be responsible for administration and implementation of the approved budget. Inherent in this responsibility is authority to expend funds up to amounts by account category as stated in the approved budget. A degree of flexibility is provided to deviate from budgeted amounts as set forth in the financial procedures manual. Now, before I read what's in there, somewhere in both of these manuals, it says something to the effect that the general manager is supposed to review each manual every 5 years. I have my doubts that has been done, but that's in these manuals. Let me find the comparable part in the procedures manual. Okay, hang on here. Here we go. Now there's a whole, there's a much longer, there's actually 3 pages of budgetary information, and as far as execution, there's no particular paragraph dealing specifically with execution, but there's an extended list of budget provision, what you do with the budget, and I call it execute the budget in the procedures manual. Again, both of these manuals are supposedly reviewed every 5 years, I think it said in here. I'm not going to try to find the provision, but there is a provision in them that says that they're supposed to be updated. So they are, I think to answer Laura's question, they are board approved documents. They may not have a board approval date on them, but they're documents that require board approval. Let's put it that way. Keith, go ahead.
So my thing is, you knew that. You knew that paragraph was referencing a couple of documents. But when I read that paragraph, I didn't know that. When I read that paragraph, I literally thought that meant that the board put out some guidance and that the general manager had to follow it, because the paragraph doesn't say documents. It says things established by the board. So, but now after you've explained it, it seems to me that this should be reworded to say something similar to the 9 paragraph, meaning procedures or limits and controls as established by applicable documents. Because then somebody like me who doesn't know better is going to go, well, what documents? Where are they? And then you would go look for them, right? But as it's written today, you wouldn't know that there's actual documents or manuals because that's not what the paragraph says. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
Because going on with that, then that would indicate to me then every time you get new board members in there, the way it's originally written now, not even mentioning documents, it makes it sound like every board gets to set their own manuals up and all of that. And that could change. You get one or two in there that want to change everything and it's not consistent. How would we as residents know what they're referencing and what they're even looking at then? You know, I do think we need to add some verbiage in there that doesn't make it sound like it's just the actual physical board people every year or two changing and making their own documents. You know what I mean?
Okay. I understand, I agree.
That was my concern. There should be some reference point. The board can do what they want, but at least somebody can go look at that reference.
Right. We need to know what they are looking at. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, I'll be right back.
Okay. I was going to summarize. I'll move away here for a minute for Keith.
Yeah, maybe we'll actually get some of these cleaned up so some owner reading it would understand what it really means.
Well, I think there's a lot of scrutiny going on right now. And I think the more clear we can help make these documents for everybody, the less drama and controversy we might have in the future that I can foresee coming. But, you know, yeah. All right, Keith's back.
We try to summarize where we are at on these four items. For both 804B and 902C, we see some additional language, for lack of better words, to be put in there to avoid future changes for document reference, and as well as some maybe clarification of where information or how information is provided. The other two, that's the 514E and F. If I understand correctly, we're basically recommending that they remain the same. Okay. Does anybody have any further comment on that before I make another further suggestion on this? Okay.
Yeah.
Where we're at on this, I believe, is to send something back to the work group that, in one way or another, says, in better words, what I just tried to indicate. Keith, could I ask you to put something together for the 804B and the 902C? And if you could give me something on that, I can add it to something on the other two, the 5.14 or 514E and F. Send it all around for us all to look at it again, and then I'll send it on to the bylaws work group. Is that Keith? Would you do that for us on that? And is that okay with the rest of us here? Okay, well, that's the way we'll go with this one then. So we have some more homework to do, but we can move on to the next item. Josh, can you put up now the members meeting notice 4.04C?
Yep,
I'll
just a
try to
second.
find my notes on it. Okay, after we take a couple of seconds, I'm going to give some background on this. Keith, not Keith, I'm sorry, Josh, what I want to do is go back, whatever, to the Article 6 in the charter. But let's take a look at this. Let me give you some background. This pertains to, in particular, provisions in the charter dealing with notice as it is sent out. And there's a couple of provisions in the charter that are to particular details regarding the notice. Now, Josh, I got ahead of myself. Can you go to paragraph or section 4.04 of the bylaws for next?
Yep.
Yeah, 4.04.
It's page 6.
Yeah, one more. Looks like we're right there. Okay. Back. There we go. Okay. This is the proposal is to add what we just had up there on the screen as a new subsection C, and I'll read it since we don't have it on the screen. It would add notification of meetings will be mailed to the addresses it appears on records of the association as noted in Article 6, subsections 4 and 5 of the charter. Now, Josh, go back to the bylaws for a minute. Okay, now note in the bylaws, so a couple of things I want to point out in particular. Up in the very first paragraph where it says shall provide written notice or of the annual or special meeting of the members to all members. Okay, it says all members in that. Keep that in mind. Now in the next two paragraphs or subsections rather, you've got information that the notice is supposed to have the date, place, time, purpose, and so on. And then it goes on down to say adequate notice shall be deemed to have been given if mailed is sent electronically to address provided and so on. Just keep in mind that that information is in the bylaws already. Now, Josh, you can go to the charter, Article 6 and subsections 4 and 5. Okay, we'll see where we're going here. I don't know if we get lost or. Josh, you're still with us.
Yes. What's up?
Charter, Article 6 of the charter.
Charter.
Yep.
My connection's going in and out because of the storm.
Okay, is it raining out there? I can't tell.
It's yeah. Are we talking about this or is it something else?
Keep going further. We're in the early part of the charter. I'm not sure what page it is.
4th, 5th, 6th.
Yeah, keep scrolling. You want to try to get as much as 4 and 5. Bring 4 to the top of the screen if you can.
Oh, 6, 4?
Yeah, no, 4.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. That's good for right now. Now, if we were to put in the suggested section, it would refer to subsection 4. And note that 4 has in it all of this place, day, time, hour, mail, electronic transmission, purpose, shall be deemed delivered, and so forth. That's in the bylaws. Now the wording here may be, or is, not exactly the same as in the bylaws. Whether or not that needs to be considered can be thought of in a minute. But I'm reluctant to pick up section 4 and already have in the minutes, the bylaws already reference the same information. So I'm reluctant to put in to suggest that we put in subsection 4 in any addition to section 4.04. Now, Josh, can you bring up simply 5A and B?
In the bylaws of the charter.
No, charter. Where you're at now, we bring up 5A and B. B will be on the next page. I don't know if you can get it or not. Probably not. Yeah, just stick with 5A. Stick with 5A for a minute. Okay,
There we go.
Okay, I gotta move my mouse out of the way. Okay. There are two parts to 5, the A and B. The one I want to look at first is B, and that's it simply says that a single notice is to be sent out when there are more than one owner, more than one ownership. I'll call it entity, like a company, or husband and wife, tenants by the entirety. That would be a singular ownership as well. But for example, a situation where two people that don't live at the same address are co-owners of the property. What this says is that only one of those people, one of those persons, will get the notice. But the second person will not be getting a notice. The history to this provision, this was added to the charter in the 2012-2013 amendment to the charter. And the reason it went in there is that there was a proposal before the charter was amended, which puts it back in the 2010-2011 timeframe, during the election, to send out to common owners who were not getting the notice, or were not getting a ballot, we're not getting a ballot and a notice of the annual meeting, that they wouldn't be getting a ballot. And the board deemed that to be unnecessary expenditure, unnecessary, however you want to word it. And out of that came this provision in the charter that we would only send out a single notice when there was a common ownership of some type at different addresses in particular. And at that time, I can assure you that nobody really gave any consideration to having that put in the bylaws. The bylaws hadn't been very long since the bylaws had been revised to begin with. And I having been present and accounted for at that time, I know when the charter was updated with this provision, we never gave the bylaws a thought. So now that we're in a review of the bylaws for whatever other reason, it was brought up to put in particular that this provision needs to be brought into the bylaws. And that's in particular why there is this recommended addition to 404C, or recommended addition of 4.04C. Now, go back up to now above that A. A states that unless otherwise stated in the governing documents, notice goes to members without regard to voting eligibility. That is actually covered in the bylaws, but it doesn't say anything about voting eligibility. It doesn't highlight voting eligibility. That's in the bylaws provision when it says that notice goes out to all members for the annual meeting and the any special meeting. Now, a comment on that is that probably has not been done except in the last 2-3 years. The elections committee, I think about 2 to 3 years ago, discovered that provision was not being met. The only thing that was going out was a notice with the ballots, which would go, of course, only go with or go to voting eligible members. But then it was recognized that the notices for members' meetings are supposed to go to all members. So there is now, it has been the last couple of years, at least a notice that's gone out to non-eligible members, as well as notice and ballot to members. And I think the notice reads a little bit different, but I'm not sure. At any rate, long story short, if we are going to add anything in 404C or add a 404C, I think it would be appropriate to make some reference solely to the material in B and possibly A. A would highlight that notice goes out without regard to the voting eligibility, although again, all members means all members. So my suggestion would be that we don't, if we are going to modify or propose modifying the bylaws, we don't refer to subsection 4 because that's duplicating information that's already there, and in some cases it's the same kind of information but worded differently. And I'm not sure that we want to tackle that or not. Possibly look at the wording in A and B and make it the same as in the charter. That can be discussed too. But anyway, long story. Comments, suggestions. I personally think we do need to make the single notice reference in the add that to the bylaws. How much further do we need to go? That's another thing. And I'm not right now, I don't suggest we simply refer to an article in subsections. It should be how it's worded as opposed to a reference to the document itself. Anyway, that's enough for me. Comments, discussions, suggestions?
Where is that new wording, the proposed wording, where is that going in section 4?
Here we go as section 4.04C, a new subsection. If Josh can put that back up. Yeah, there would be a new subsection that would either refer to sections of the charter, like it says here, or it could put in some words what we would want to have in there. And I'm suggesting if we're going to make this a change, that we specifically refer to the single notice provision. And if we wanted to, or thought it was desirable, we could highlight the notice goes out notice goes out without regard to voting eligibility.
Yeah, ballots should only go to voting eligibility. Everything else should go to all other notifications should go to all owners or all members.
Without getting into without going to the bylaws provision, the subsections in Article 5 of the bylaws pertaining to the election does say that the notice of the annual meeting goes with the ballots. And what has happened in the past, except the last couple of years, that's not the way it's happened. What has happened in the past is that the only thing that went out is the ballot and the notice to those who are eligible to vote, and the all members provision getting notice was missed in the current 4.04.
So this proposed language, I guess, that came out of the work committee,
Yes.
the work group.
Yeah.
Just reading it, it appears to be addressing a problem with the address that the information is sent to, not the periodicity of it or who it's sent to, but rather specifically the address. Is there a problem associated with the addresses that these things are sent to?
Not that I know of, although I don't know of any particular details, but from time to time, once in a while you hear something about it, once in a while you don't. There will be people who don't get ballots. And the reason they don't get ballots is there's some kind of a difference between the address information that the association has and the address that the person is expecting to get mail at. Now, why that happens, I can't
Well,
speak.
As a part-timer, we have our home here. We have our address here in Ocean Pines, but because we're not here full-time, we do have a lot of the Ocean Pines mail sent to our full-time address. So I could see where if that was not clearly marked in the record somewhere in the office that me as a homeowner really wanted my mail sent to my Hartford County address, you know what I mean? And it kept getting sent here. The ballot was sent here, but I'm not here to get it. I could see where that could be the problem. Is that the discrepancy? Like that could be a possible discrepancy that some people might not be getting it because somewhere the office only saw the Ocean Pines address and assumed everything was supposed to be sent there, versus if you do have another residence,
Yeah. I suspect that that's probably the problem, is that what the records that Ocean Pines use isn't accurately reflecting, maybe not kept up to date. I think that's been a problem in the past as well, that somebody does not live here full time. It's not their residential address, and they move somewhere, and Ocean Pines isn't aware of it, and it gets sent to the old home address, if I can put it that way. And it's entirely possible at one time that it got some attention, and I don't have specific recollection of the details. It may have been such an old address that there was no longer forwarding situation. I don't know that there's, Keith, I don't know that there's a big address issue. Now, why? I've not really given consideration as to why it appears on the records of the association phrases in there. Keith, I'm sorry. Josh, can you put the bylaws 4.04 back up again?
While he's putting that up, I could also think of properties that are held in trust, where you have multiple members of that trust. There could be a problem with mailing out notices because the trust address, the official trust address, could be a lawyer's office, unless somebody designates otherwise. And if we're only going to send out one notice, then that means somebody in that pile of people associated with that trust is going to get that notice and is then responsible for notifying everybody else in the trust. I'm not sure how all that works, but I can see it getting messy.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well, we've got the bylaws revision back up there. I don't see anything. Where does it say something about mailing?
No, it's
Deemed mail electronic to the address provided by the member for this purpose. So there is already a reference. There is already a reference to address responsibility in the bylaws now.
Yeah, the problem I had was during the computer conversion. I had a rental property, and in the past, everything from that rental property in Ocean Pines came to my primary address. During the conversion, it got dropped, but Ruth got it straightened back out, so I haven't had a problem since. But some other folks may have had similar problems, because my renter called me to say, look, I got this document. So I went and picked it up, and then I got a hold of Ruth. And she got it squared away. So that was part of it. So I don't know what happened. Some of this may be a result of a carryover from the computer conversion that has now been corrected.
Okay, I'll read this. Josh doesn't need to put the charter back up, but the charter says here, such notice shall be delivered when deposited in the United States mail address to the member at, says his address as appears on the records of the association. Yeah, it's just above where you're at now, Josh. Yeah, it's the last sentence or two. Yeah, where if you start at the right-hand column where it says if mailed, etc., as appears in the records of the association. I don't know if we need to maybe put some additional words or revise a little bit that provision that includes address in the current bylaws, but the bylaws do refer to address information. So I don't put a particular emphasis on that. The proposed provision having information about address as it appears in the records of the association. We may want to, if we're going to do something in 404, may want to rewrite something about this how you get the notice, make it more like what's here in the charter. That's what I referred to a few minutes ago. I said we may have things that are different in the charter, worded different, same kind of thing, or same provision, except worded a little bit differently. We may want to consider bringing the charter and the bylaws into similar, more closely together in their wording. But as far as address as an issue, I don't see that we need to. I don't see that there needs to be an emphasis of some kind on address, other than we may want to consider revising what we say about address. Hopefully that can confuse everybody.
Jim, this wording that's in front of us here highlighted, that wording to me seems problematic, because I would have to imagine that we have members such as part-timers who have more than one address in our system. They have an Ocean Pines address, and then they have a full-time address. And I don't know how our North Star system is set up, but one of those addresses would have to be designated as the address to send correspondence to.
Okay.
And so the proposed language from the work group specifically says the address designated for that purpose. That's what caught my eye, right? As it appears, wait a minute, when we mail to the address, it appears on the records association. No, it doesn't. Maybe I was just thinking that in my head.
Well, Josh, can you go back to the bylaws provision then?
Because it says to the address as it appears on records of the association. But if people have more than one address in their record, because they're not a full timer, then to me that seems problematic.
Yeah, if you did something so simple as added mailing address, it would make it clear, because there could only be one mailing address.
Or
That's a
mailing
property
address, or mailing address designated
Right.
for correspondence. You know,
Right.
in the system, it's got a star next to it or something that says only send stuff here.
Well, you could in B where it says address provided, because you add designated.
Yeah, designated by the member for this purpose. That's right. Provided should be changed to designated.
Yeah.
Yep.
That would work.
Okay. All right, well, that takes care of the address part of the proposal. Now we're back to the question kind of boils down to adding a C which would pick up the single notice provision. I think the single notice provision needs to be here. It's okay that it's in the charter, except that fewer people look at the charter than look at the bylaws. That doesn't mean that many look at the bylaws, but certainly more look at the bylaws than the charter, I'm sure. Picking up the single notice provision and perhaps including the without regard to voter eligibility. Although, as I said, that is in 404. It's just without regard to eligibility, voting eligibility is not highlighted in any manner.
So now I'm up to speed, okay? So if we change the word in the previous paragraph to designated, so then that now solves the address issue. Then here in paragraph C, I don't think that the wording address as it appears on the records of the association even need to be in there. And instead, some of the other wording that you're proposing has to do with single notice. And what was the other one? Single notice and eligibility.
Yeah,
That should be what's in C.
Yeah, that would be in a new C.
I can see that.
Okay.
So I think C here needs to be, I think my recommendation is that B is tweaked to have that one word changed, and that we reword this C recommendation to remove the address issue because that's discussed in B. And we add in instead language associated with the single payer and eligibility, or single notice and eligibility.
Right, yeah, okay. I'm in agreement with that. How about Laura and Bob? Any comments?
I agree with that.
I don't see Laura.
Looks
I
like
don't see it.
I think I am. I got out for just a minute, so I might have missed some of.
We said you were volunteering to rewrite all this.
Darn it, I knew I shouldn't have gotten kicked out again.
Laura, what we did you hear the discussion about changing? I think it's provided to designated addresses.
Yeah.
Did you hear that at all?
Till 2 o'clock.
Josh, could you put the bylaws back up?
Like hell, if I went to click on something about Reagan and it did that, don't turn it off deal and all that, should I just turn it off?
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah, hit the button on the box.
Okay.
Okay, Laura, in B, I'm sorry.
You're right.
Next
You're
one
right,
down.
B.
Next one down, Josh, B, provided. Okay,
There you go.
yeah, okay.
Okay,
That would be
All right.
changed to designated
okay.
so that there's more clarity to what's being asked of them. The other thing is that in the 404, proposed 404C, that would make reference to the single notice. Instead of it saying, as noted in Article 6, subsections 4 and 5, it would instead have wording that refers to that it's only single notice is provided and that notice goes to all members regardless of voting eligibility. That's not the exact wording, but those two points would be made. Single notice and you get notice regardless of your voting eligibility. That's the proposal that we're coming on to a consensus on for our purposes at this time. So you have anything you want to add to that? I'm not sure. Laura, are you still with us? I can't tell if she's frozen or not. Nope, she's not. We're not, Laura, can you hear us? I guess not. I don't think I don't,
All right, am I here again?
you're back with us. We can hear you.
And the funny thing is I'm actually in Ocean Pines right now, so it's, it's not like I am at the other house, so it shouldn't be this difficult, right?
All right.
All right.
Did you hear anything of what I
Yes.
summarized? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think I'm good with everything. Yep.
All right, let me, all right, what we're going to be doing on this, we'll be going back to the work group again. I'll go ahead and put something to send back to them, send it around, and we can agree, edit, whatever may need to be the case in that one. All right. We're not doing too bad on time, at least. Let's go on to the informal action item on the agenda. Josh, if you have, there's one that's a sheet that was in our packet entitled Informal Action. Yeah, that's it there. Okay. Again, brief background on this. The intention here is to clarify the informal action provision. The actual provision that the bylaws are based on are at the bottom. It's in the Maryland Corporations and Associations article, and it's 2-408, and it discusses how you can have a board action without there being an actual meeting taking place. Now, the problem that has occurred is in the current provision at the very top, the highlighted part, it reads, and I'll just go ahead and read it and explain. Unanimous written consent to take action without a meeting is signed by each director. Then it goes on to say, the consent and action taken shall be filed with the minutes of the next board meeting. Okay. It's that first part of the last sentence, the consent and action. That in the way that's worded in the bylaws is subject to being read that the first thing you do is every director has to consent to taking action without there being a meeting. So there's a motion, let's take action without a meeting. All directors say yes, then they go on and specify an action that is taken. The way that has been written has lent itself to being understood that the action, buy a truck, for example, for public works, at whatever the quote was, does not require unanimity. All it requires is a majority of the board, or majority of the members voting on the matter. And that's not what the code says. The code says that it has to be unanimous. The current board has been doing this in two steps. One, they agree to take an action without a meeting and unanimously agree to that. And now more recently, after this has been brought into question, they actually take the action is actually unanimous and is put in writing. And what the board has been doing is recording that in the minutes of the next board meeting. To avoid this confusion or potential continuing future confusion as board members come and go, to avoid this two-step unanimous consent, but the action doesn't have to be unanimous. To avoid that confusion, the proposed revision is directly below. And all that does is simply refer to the code provision. Now, that's similar to what we do with the open meeting, closed meeting provision. We simply refer to the code provision in the Homeowners Association Act. So what this is doing would be similar to doing that, doing the same thing. Now, Josh, if you could scroll down a little bit to take into account or to show the code provision. Okay. If you read through that, there's no real way that you can interpret it to mean that you can unanimously consent to taking action, but then the action itself doesn't have to be unanimously consented to. It just says if unanimous consent, which sets forth the action, is given in writing and so forth. There's no real way that you can misinterpret the bylaws provision as it exists now. Okay, that's all the background to this. It's just simply trying to avoid what has been something of a continuing misunderstanding, although I will say that as it stands now, I think the current board is aware of how this kind of thing needs to be approached. That's the background and that's the proposal. Anybody have any comments to it?
I think it's pretty clear and concise.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with this proposal.
Yeah, I don't know why. I've mentioned this before. I don't know why in this provision from the current bylaws back to the pre-current bylaws, the pre-2008 bylaws wording for this provision was different, and it wasn't subject to this kind of the consent in action. Consent can be unanimous action, not. I don't have any idea why the wording was changed, but it was, and it's a hazard with that kind of thing. All right, well, unless we have some other to comment on this, we'll just check it off as one of our consensus for the time being to be revisited when we, as a final approval. We'll go on from there.
Okay.
All right. Let me see if I can avoid confusing all of my papers here.
That would be helpful for later when you try to go back through it.
The next item up is 304 and 4.07A. I don't, Josh, I don't think I put anything out on that. Can you go to, Josh, can you go to the bylaws? Let's go to 4.07A first. All right. If you've had, and you don't have to have it handy, but if you had handy, what's being referred to in the summary is the fourth sentence in A, and there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, it would be the sentence starts with each member. Right in the middle of the provision, it says each member. Okay, that's it. That sentence. The proposal is the proposal is related to the clarification of, and I'm not going to try to go back and recreate, or not recreate, but refer to in detail what we decided to do. But we made changes to 301 that made more clear what it is to be a member who is eligible to vote. And the proposal for this provision that is highlighted by Josh, I'm going to try to find it here. And the proposal is to make that sentence read, each member signing the petition must be eligible to vote as referenced in section 301C when the petition is filed. That reference back to 301C is where it includes that you have paid your annual charge and you've not had your voting suspended by the board for a DR violation. The same thing applies to the provision in 4.0, I'm not 4.03, 3.04. And Josh, you don't need to really go back to that. It's another reference to eligible to vote. It would be modifying the phrase eligible to vote by referring back to sections that specifically state what is required for eligibility. If somebody hears a beeping sound, that's a device I have that's unhappy with me, but its unhappiness does not affect me sitting here continuing to do things. The proposal again for these two subsections is to modify the must be eligible to vote to make it clear what is required to be eligible to vote. My problem with doing that is that we have eligible to vote referenced many other places in the bylaws. We have eligible to vote. You have to be eligible to vote to be a member of a committee. If you're going to attend a members meeting and want to be part of the quorum, you have to be eligible to vote. And there's in the background history of our maximum number of votes, if you have that somewhere that you want to pull out someday and look at it again, there are maybe 10, 11 places in the bylaws where eligible to vote is referenced. And this is one of them. And then the other section we're talking about it is one of them as well. So there's all kinds of places where eligible to vote is used one way or another. And if we're going to reference a specific eligibility provision in this one that we're looking at now, or the other one where we haven't called up and I don't think it's necessary to, if we're going to do that in two places, do we have to do it in all places? Or should we, and I didn't put together any information on to send out to consider. I would rather have 301C or 301. 301 is, I think, entitled voting rights. I'd rather have it entitled voting and eligibility rights. And so somebody hopefully would recognize, yeah, there's a complete section that's on voting rights and the eligibility to vote, and not have to be referring back to that at places within the bylaws. Again, I've done a lot of kind of rambling on here. Hopefully it's understood what I'm trying to get at. We have in particular a proposal to put in a specific reference back to a section in the bylaws in this particular provision, and an earlier one that we don't have up, which I don't think we really need to have up. That's the proposal, to modify. Let's look at it as just this one, for example. Just modify that must be eligible to include referring back to a section that describes what you got to be or do to be eligible. That's the heart of the proposal. Any comments? Yes, Keith.
So I guess I would say if we were going to change this to be more specific, I would probably recommend that it read, each member signing the petition must meet the requirements of 3.01C when the petition is filed. So in other
Okay.
words, remove the wording must be eligible to vote and replace it with meet the requirements of 3.01C when the petition is filed. Because if you leave in those words, must be eligible to vote, then there's the potential for somebody reading this to go, oh, I know what that means. That means you got to be a property owner. In other words, they may interpret that based on what their understanding of that is. If you remove that and you put in 3.01C, they got to go look up 3.01C and see what that says.
Okay. Well, okay. I understand the wording, but that brings up the not concern, but it brings up those words eligible to vote are used elsewhere other than this one and the other section that we haven't looked at.
So on that note, I would say that should probably be updated to common language throughout. So I would agree that probably throughout the bylaws, anywhere where it says must be eligible to vote, should probably be replaced with language, meet the requirements of 3.01C instead. That would be my input.
Okay.
I would agree with that. It'd be so much easier if anyone was reading any part of the bylaws where it says eligible to vote to know what section to go to see the specifics that make you eligible, instead of, like Keith said, somebody going, oh, well, that must mean you just need to own property, whereas we know it's got more steps to that than just having a house here. But because it's used a lot, it should be one common place that everybody should be able to go to find the definition of eligible to vote, what that really means. So that there's no discrepancy. So nobody can say, well, it was described one way here, but somewhere, something different in this passage. If we have one section that it is consistently referred to that explains all of that, then there's no room for personal interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we're going to clean up the bylaws, there's a perfect example. If you change the bylaws for that, and then later all the committees change their resolutions to refer to that, if that's what it takes for membership, then you got one place. If the board decides they want to change what's eligible to vote, you only change it at one spot because everything refers back to that location.
Exactly.
And going along with that, we have to update our bylaws on a regular basis, right? But if we have to do it by the referendum, sending to update and change the bylaws and give everybody a chance to approve it or not, then let's get as much of this done in one shot so that you don't have to keep spending the money. Oh, you know what? 1 year or 2 years later, we found something else that we need to change the wording on, but technically it should go back to the people to be able to be approved. Let's try and make it as uniform throughout the whole thing so that you wouldn't have to keep spending the cost of the referendums to do all of this, other than the designated every 3 to 5 years, whatever our particular routine is,
Okay. Okay. well, one of the things that's going to have to be done is identify, make sure all of the places are where the same kind of reference has been made. Yeah, Josh has highlighted another eligible. It's phrased a little bit different. Eligible to cast a vote.
Yeah, I don't know if you could see it, but I did a find and replace, and then the word eligible is used 16 times in the bylaws.
Yeah.
That's better than I thought.
It's probably
It didn't say 32 times, right?
probably more than I've previously identified. I'm sure it is, to tell you the truth. Okay, one of the things that is the whole eligibility issue is one that I brought up at the work group level. And the reason I brought it up was the issue that came up, I guess it's 3 years ago, the annual meeting at the director election conducted at the time of the annual meeting. There was a eligibility issue at that time involving the payment of the annual charge, which is, of course, the major element of being eligible to vote. And it involves the 35-day provision, which is actually applies to being eligible to vote in the election, as opposed to being eligible to vote, qualifying you to be a candidate. And I'm the one that brought that up. That's what I'm stumbling around trying to say. And that's what's resulted in some of this eligibility discussion, or probably all of it, as a matter of fact. What I propose to do, suggest to do, subject to how you guys want to feel about it, I can go back through and identify all of these places and take the wording that Keith has suggested and see how all of that fits. And again, in particular, be identified all throughout the bylaws where a change would be made. And Josh, I think, has already indicated it's apparently 16 different places. So we can see what we're talking about doing, and the impact and whatever else may need to be considered. There's a possibility of maybe revising the reference in the 3.01 C and D. D is a new subsection that we've talked about, and I think consensus decided on adding. Maybe there needs to be some addition of one kind or another, some kind of an additional revision in 301 that makes it easier to track everything together. But at any rate, my suggestion is, being the guy that kind of is the origin of this thing, I'll go back and identify where we are in the bylaws, the suggested wording by Keith, and anything else that I might think would be appropriate to consider, trying to tie this eligibility issue all up in a reasonably clear and consistent manner. Does anybody else want to volunteer to do that? Otherwise, I will.
So I just did a quick search. The word eligible appears that many times, but the term eligible to vote appears 9 times.
Okay.
So maybe it's not as bad. And I'm actually highlighting them now. And if you want, I'll email that to you.
Yeah, if you would, that would help.
Yeah, I'll email that to you with all the highlighted, and then you can go through and do the word fitting.
Okay.
I also did eligible to, and that together is 12 times.
I'll work my way through it.
Once or twice it's eligible to cast or something like that.
Yeah, that probably needs to be added in there.
Maybe
Okay.
it's possible. Maybe it's possible to put some sort of directory in there, not directory, as Keith said earlier, that defines what those words mean and refer to one reference for them.
Well,
Well, that's what I
Eligible
meant
vote.
by, that's what I meant by saying meets the requirements of 3.01C. So then
Right.
anytime, anywhere throughout the document, you're talking about eligibility to vote, it just refers you back to that article.
Or you could even leave it there and put in brackets behind the word without having to rewrite it.
Oh,
Eligible to
yeah.
vote, and in brackets, put your note there that refers to it. That way you don't have to rewrite it. You're just making it your clarification.
well, we also have definitions there's a definition section to the bylaws. Maybe that's a place you could put something like that.
Yeah. I missed that, the definition section.
I don't think no, I'm pretty sure the prior bylaws did not have a definition like that. They had a definition called member in good standing. You had to be a member in good standing to be eligible to vote. That was not exactly an eligible to vote definition. Well, let me try a variety of different approaches to how we can do that. And I'll get that together between now and our next meeting, which we have to talk about when we're going to do that as well. And how about I'll consider all of those various proposals, and we'll have some at least alternatives, options to talk about at the next meeting. Is that an acceptable approach?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Now I've put up my agenda someplace here. All right, we're down to the item that says Resolution CO1 Annual Committee Report. Josh, I think you probably have, yeah, there it is. This is on the agenda only for not consideration to put what information to put in there. This is a format of a report that is due from our committee to the Board of Directors by the last day of October. The report is as of the last day of September. And it is what's necessary to go in the report's pretty explanatory. There's several sections there that we need to put information in as applicable. And the other reason I have this on the agenda is just to make everybody aware of the fact that we're going to have to put a report together and have it as an item we can continue to discuss as we go along between now and certainly the early October timeframe when it needs to be pretty much finalized. I'm just trying to avoid a last minute scramble, which has happened in the past, to get one of these reports put together and get it in on time. In general, the last few years anyway, Michelle Bennett has sent around to the committee chairs a reminder sometime around mid or late September that you got a report that's coming due. But this is just kind of our opportunity to get a little bit of a head start so that we can start thinking about items to put in there in the near future. Maybe not necessarily next meeting, but certainly by the time we get to the end of September, we need to be pretty well zeroing in on a report to be prepared for sending to the board by the end of October. That's the only thing for that on the agenda. Has anybody got any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward information. And I've got the copies of the last year or two reports. I can send those around to see what's gone in on in the past what the committee has submitted. Okay. The last new business item is for our next meeting. We've only scheduled up through today. We've been going on a 2-week basis. The 2 weeks from now is the Friday before Labor Day. I personally don't have any, I'm not going out of town anywhere on Friday before Labor Day, but I don't know what all plans various people may have. That may be an awkward time for people. Do we really want to go for Friday before Labor Day, or go to the next Friday after that, which would be September 10th?
I would prefer the 3rd because I will be at the Inlet on the 10th for the Wine Fest. Unless you would like me to dial in from 1 to 3. And Dee can solve all the world's problems while I.
Okay, the 3rd is okay with me.
I have no problem with the 3rd.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
All right, well, let's go with the 3rd, same time, same place, and so forth. Josh, you can send us a link later on when the materials are sent out. I'm going to have to communicate some stuff to Camilla about what we've got to do, so to speak, with the bylaws work group and a couple of other things as well. So, and I'll be doing that in the next couple of days or so. And I will give her a heads up on the September 3rd Friday being our next scheduled date. Okay.
When is there?
What about the next one?
Well, the next one after that would be the 17th. I'm going to tip this a minute. I don't think I have any.
I can do the 17th.
I can do the 17th as well.
Keith, I can.
Yeah, I can do the 17th.
All right, well, I'll let me make sure I got this straight now. 3rd and 17.
Right.
Okay, again, when they send out our, well, I have to communicate with Camilla, so I will give her a heads up on that. I don't know, Josh, do you put the schedule on the calendars now?
Just did. Yep.
Okay, so we're scheduled for the 3rd and 3rd and the 17th.
Can you remind Camilla that we still have to do the second reading of
Yes,
our things
that-
so that before
that
they have their next official board meeting that should be put on there?
Yeah, I that's quite correct. I have have it in my notes somewhere, but when I listen to this video or watch this video again for the minutes, I'll make sure I'll get it before that.
We just want to be able to cross that off our checklist that it was done, you know?
Well, there are two that I honestly don't know what's happened with the Communications Advisory Committee. They had a first reading too. I'm not sure they've had a second reading either.
Yeah, I don't
At any rate, all right. The remaining item we have on the agenda is that governance document review. And I have that here somewhere. Yes, I do. There is really not much change that I can make an input to this. We're on the B resolutions. We're waiting to hear if there are any changes that need to be made to B07, which is petitions, as a result of the recent referendum, and more particularly the petition process that occurred before it. And so that's actually something we need from the board. And Bob, when we get to the Cs, I gave a September 1st response to all of that, so we're gonna be waiting until after September 1st to consider those. And just about everything else is a future date as opposed to a current date.
So there's probably no reason to update.
Yeah, no real update, yeah. And the only other thing I guess missed this somewhere along the line. On F04, we've got last review date was May 21, and then the scheduled review date is also May 21. So that should be, I think, May 22.
Make that May 22.
Yeah. And then on the M resolutions, we're still waiting for M07 and M05. And other than those two, and of course M08, that's just kind of status quo for the time being. But I don't have anything on M07, M05. I'm going to have to include that in my reminders. And I don't know about the where we are on the compliance procedures. That's been the M01 provision about legal action has been on hold because of the court status on what the courts can handle because of the pandemic, and I don't know that that's changed or not. But that's going to kind of have to wait until the board comes back and starts holding some regular meetings. So it's really, other than that one thing, Bob, I don't see anything that can be changed, which means nothing substantive to change on it.
Yeah, we never heard back on C04 either, have we?
No.
Okay. I don't see the need to change it. I can update it, or I can just make it up to the status quo and change the one date and leave everything else highlighted.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. That's what I will do.
Okay. Well, we've been trying to go for 2 hours and we have 15 minutes left. I really don't have anything further on to try to pull out of the agenda, not pull out of the agenda, to pull out of our items. We do have two on the status list that have come in from outside. One was the committee membership for associate members. That means people who are, in particular, would be people who are renters. Associate member title applies to people who are here just for a weekend, but I don't think that would be under consideration. And then the other is a suggestion that the provision regarding removal of a director be made easier. And that refers to removal of a director by the membership, not by the board members, but by the membership. I don't propose to try to discuss those today, but they are. We've gone through each of the items on the work group summary. We're somewhere on each of those items, so we could very well begin to consider those two, what I'll call outside suggestions on bylaws, the one on associate membership on committees, and director removal by the membership. We could very well see those as an agenda item in the next meeting, or certainly fairly soon, and continue on with those. But I don't propose to, other than just acknowledge that they're there. I don't think we really need to get into them today. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready for an adjournment if everybody else is.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Bob, do we adjourn? Anybody second? Just
Second.
wait. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Unanimous vote. Have a good weekend, folks. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, you too.
Bye.
Aye.